Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Airspeed's Korra Rewatch video. This one is going to be for K210, A New Spiritual Age. So last episode before we get into the kind of four-part finale as we sort of know it, I suppose we more or less treat it that way because Nick basically gave us the last four episodes online because we did their coronation stuff fairly well at the time, but and I think because of that, it's mainly been considered a four-part finale, even though I suppose the finale as such is really the last two episodes, but or three. I suppose the next episode, Night of a Thousand Stars, would be kind of separate than the other ones, but they were all kind of released together at the time. But anyway, this episode is really, really good. We get our, longest exploration of the spirit world in the entire series, just getting to see so many different spirits, see kind of Korra experience the spirit world for the first time. Pretty much just us as the audience as well, getting to explore areas of the spirit world that aren't just areas where some of the big powerful spirits are. We get to see a lot of different sections here as Jinora and Korra are separated very early on in the episode. With Jinora, her story goes fairly well right up until the kind of the Wan Shi Tong sort of betrayal happens, and then Korra starts bad, gets better, and then ends on a pretty dark note. And yeah, I think visually this is one of the best looking episodes in the entire series, just because of how bright and colorful most of the spirit world is, but then they're also able to do really nice stuff with the colors when they make it dark and emphasize dark spirits. And it's one of those aspects, like this episode almost on its own makes the book 2 art book such a nice book, because you're getting to see all the designs for the different spirits and how they did the spirit world looks really, really good. But I suppose this is also the episode that really explains to us some of the stuff about the spirit world that's sort of important to the plot going on here. The main one here would be, I suppose, fully committing to the idea of okay, if you go through the portal, you bring your physical body in, and thus you have your bending with you, bending being an ability that you can only use if you have a physical body. The details surrounding that are a little bit kind of vague, but more or less the idea seems to be that there's a difference between spirit energy and chi energy, or kind of, I suppose, physical kind of energy in a way, and bending more or less runs off physical energy. And then there's another form of energy, which is pure cosmic energy, which is a whole different thing, which we'll get into. We'll address that when we get to it in the last couple of episodes of this book. But for now, just be aware of these kind of different energy type things. And it was just cool to see that, Korra not having her bending here, Jinora not having bending, but Unalaq having his bending and what he was able to do at the end of the episode. And him revealing to Korra, yeah, you should have come through the portal, you would have been able to protect yourself in this way. Even Jinora might have been able to escape with their bending in the spirit world because there's so many open spaces. So that's just the different kind of sides of things and how it fits in very nicely. Here's a way to have bending in the spirit world, and explain why Aang never had bending in the spirit world as well. This is one that links really well with previous continuity and just helps to expand things really, really nicely. A key piece of information Jinora finds out in this episode is the details surrounding harmonic convergence, and I suppose why it's so important to close the portals, in that they say, but it's not confirmed, that the elders the elders thought or kind of predicted basically that harmonic convergence would just pass by basically if the portals remain closed, and the big battle between Rob and Vaatu, light and dark, would never happen. But if they were both opened, then harmonic convergence would happen as it usually would. But the power of harmonic convergence would give Vaatu the power to actually break free of the prison that Wan put him in. So that's the kind of significance to the portals and why it's so necessary to close them, just to guarantee that Vaatu can't break free, and if he can't get out, the battle, harmonic convergence never happens, and the world just remains in the same state that it has been in. Now, some people, like, there's been some speculation about, like, oh, well, is this only the second harmonic convergence? Like the one that we saw in Beginnings is like the first one with the Avatar involved, basically. Is this the one immediately following that? Everything that we know points to the fact that it is, in fact, yes, it is the second harmonic convergence. It is not the case that we've had multiple different harmonic convergences since then. The previously on in this episode confirms that it was 10,000 years ago when the Wan event happened from now, which confirms to us that Korra is only the second Avatar to participate in harmonic convergence, and it also is, I suppose, the main reason why the whole average age of the Avatar things is a little bit weird, and why the somewhat weak explanation of, like, oh, well, in kind of Chinese mythology, like, saying 1,000 or 10,000 more or less means kind of infinite. It's not really being like a direct number, but it's like, in this case, I'm like, okay, that's one thing, and I get it for, like, Wan Shi Tong to a degree, like him saying that, like, I know 10,000 things. Most people probably know 10,000 things if you really force them. So the knowledge spirit, not knowing it, that 10,000 things, like, okay, I get that with that. Him saying that is meant to mean 10,000 years. But in this case specifically, it literally means harmonic convergence takes place every 10,000 years. And there's only been one, basically, since one, and this is it. Because I've seen some people, trying to come up with a defense for the whole weird average age of the Avatar thing, and pointing out that no, there's been multiple harmonic convergences since then, and there hasn't. Because as is stated here, Jinora doesn't say that the elders knew that this is what happened. They basically predicted. Everything pointed to the fact that if the portals were closed, harmonic convergence would just pass without anything happening. And that's obviously because harmonic convergence hasn't happened since Vaatu was sealed away, and this is the first one. And that's the significance of it. That's why this is so important. I think it means a little bit more that this is a bit of a, like, mystery. Even if everything goes well for the hero characters, Korra could still have to fight in harmonic convergence depending on what exactly the effect is on Vaatu. I suppose the spirit world stuff that we get here is, it's really cool because, like, immediately you see the dynamic. Jinora is at ease in the spirit world. Even though it's her first time there, her just knowledge of the spirits, the little that she has, ends up working out, and she knows exactly how to kind of handle them. Whereas Korra is very on edge in the spirit world. She's kind of warning Jinora to be cautious, and she's actually the one who's more on edge than anyone. And we see that Jinora immediately kind of latches onto the idea that, like, Korra's emotional energy is affecting the spirits, which is explained to us later by Iroh, that because I suppose Korra is a part human, part spirit, and specifically Rava is an aspect of this, there's so much, I suppose, power within her that her emotions do directly kind of affect the world around her, that we know that the spirits change depending on the balance of light and dark in the world, and if the human side of the Avatar kind of emphasizes more darkness, obviously that's going to affect the kind of spirits around as well. In that it's a cool dynamic. Does it contradict anything in Avatar? Not really. Like, Heibai, I suppose, retroactively is revealed to be light and dark spirit, the two different forms of him. So, like, that's more or less explained. But the fact is that most of the time Aang goes to the spirit world, he either is forced to be, like, emotionless because of the whole Ko situation, so we don't really see him affect anything, or is just there to, like, talk to Roku, and him actually exploring the spirit world isn't really a factor in anything. Even in Escape from the Spirit World, the journey to find the different avatars is sort of skipped over enough where it just doesn't really come up and is not really it doesn't really contradict anything that this avatar's emotions affecting the world around them in the spirit world, really. But still, it's a cool thing to see, like, when she meets up with Iroh, and just the fact that on Korra's side of the story, she's separated from Jinora, and immediately what happens is she's so terrified, she's surrounded by darkness, she she sees herself as being helpless, so she's sort of, the look that she sort of takes on in the spirit world is of her, I suppose, in a way, prior to her knowing that she had bending almost. That it's early, it's like first episode of Korra, like in the bit where we see her when she's younger. It's that, but it's almost her younger than that, before she has her bending and her kind of drive and what she wants to do. So I think that works really well to kind of show that Korra is in this position where she really has to learn. She's almost back to being that really, really beginner level student, having to learn from someone. And it makes it such a, I suppose, nice visual journey when you see she's learned so much from Iroh herself, and this journey with the kind of little dragon bird spirit, and the two of them both kind of turn into their true forms when they're finally like comfortable in their world. And it's good because it's Korra meeting her like Heibai equivalent, basically. The spirit that Aang got on well with was Heibai, and this dragon bird spirit, we see it again in Turf Wars, seems to be one that's very friendly with Korra. So that works out well. And I suppose we'll get into the Iroh thing now. Iroh sort of saves Korra from the dark area that she's in and kind of helps to explain things to her. Obviously, this was sort of spoiled before the episode actually aired, because otherwise it's like an amazing reveal. There's really been no setup that like you expect Iroh to appear, that you think he's in the spirit world, because at this point we didn't know humans could become spirits. This is effectively that reveal here in terms of another spirit world mechanic. I think had like some questions about like the Painted Lady, but I even think the Painted Lady was a retroactive thing that occurred later on. The explanation of that the Painted Lady is a human who kind of became a spirit over time. But this Iroh reveal here is that. And it's really cool because obviously from the comics we know that the spirits can kind of do the reverse. They can choose to give up their sort of immortality, become mortal, and more or less take on a human form. And now the fact that we see that the reverse is possible if you choose to meditate out of your body and leave your body behind, you can become a spirit over time. We see that here. The Painted Lady is an example, and so on. It's a really cool reveal in terms of like a duality between humans and spirits, and potentially like an idea of like there could be a huge reveal down the road about this if they ever committed to giving us larger details about the spirit world and how the world of Avatar works. Where do spirits come from in the first place? Is there just a finite amount of them, or do new spirits come into being, and how does that exactly happen? Obviously, to a degree, this sort of suggests that perhaps most spirits are just humans who chose to have their spirit go out of their body and just became spirits over time. Or, or it's either that, or there is just a finite amount of spirits, and then humans can maybe become spirits if they want to. But, because like, Avatar in a way is all about cycles. We know reincarnation to a degree is how humans work. But they've still been so vague about that, in that like, okay, Wan specifically they more or less established that he reincarnates, but his is sort of a known reincarnation, that because the person who bends all four elements, it's always known throughout their entire life who the reincarnations of Wan are, because they have bending. Whereas like, is that the case for everyone, that just everyone who dies reincarnates into a new human? Except it's just an unknown thing in most of these cases, because of the amount of time that probably passes between it, and the just how impractical it is to really consider that like you notice a similarity between someone who died and someone who was like newly born. But that's what this book more or less seems to establish to us, that reincarnation is how the life-death cycle in the Avatar world works. But you can kind of step out of that by choosing to become a spirit, or a spirit choosing to become a human. Again, we don't really know the specifics of if a human who's become a spirit can then choose to become human again, or if a spirit who becomes a human can choose to meditate their spirit out of their body and become a spirit again, or if you can only do that turn once. I suppose Hundun is another example of a character who kind of became a spirit over time, just because of how long he survived, and he doesn't have his physical body anymore. It's really interesting what this brings up. And then with Iroh and Korra's conversations here, he's obviously the one to explain to her that her emotions can basically turn spirits dark, or can turn spirits the other way, from dark to light, and that she can really alter the spirit world and do nearly anything that she wants in the spirit world just by having control over her emotions. Other than that, we get the cool scene with the teapot. I love that kind of little Korra just kind of points it out there. And we just saw that teapot and how the significance of it. And Iroh explains how he found it over time here. It's his best find in the spirit world. And the whole, there's still a drop of light in every cup. It's nice to see that as like this relic that is in the spirit world, that it's kind of remembered. And for him being the guy who's all about tea, to find effectively, I suppose the most important teapot in the world, it's very fitting that he has it. But the core of what we get here is Iroh sort of in his advice about light and dark. If you look for the light, you will often find it, but if you look for darkness, that's all you will ever see. It's the classic light-dark dynamic of just that choosing darkness is the easy path. It happens quickly, it spreads quickly, it gives you power very, very quickly, but it's the easy way. It's harder to go down the path of light because you have to, it's harder to find, harder to maintain, harder to spread in a way, and darkness is always ready to take over. That's what we saw in Beginnings, that the second Vaatu was freed, he immediately put the world at risk, and that's exactly the danger that Korra is trying to avoid here, is that if Vaatu is freed again, that's exactly what will happen. They can try and stop it, but darkness will spread. It spreads so easily. It's such a danger to the world. And yeah, just over time, kind of asking her to just beg the question of things that seem scary in the darkness are sometimes not threatening when you see them in the light, and that's her journey with the dragon bird spirit. And she goes up to the top of the mountain. She changes those dark spirits into light. And it's a really cool moment. I love the sequence where little Korra becomes normal Korra again, and the dragon bird spirit kind of reunites with what seem to be, it's like brothers and sisters, but then they merge together into the overall big dragon bird spirit. Very, very cool sequence. As for Janora's story before the, I suppose, big final scene, everything goes very well for her initially. She finds Furryfoot. She's kind of in this lighter part of the spirit world. The spirits aren't really annoying her. She's able to get help from them. They're able to tell her where to go, guide her. She even gets to ride on Furryfoot for a bit, and she heads to Wan Shi Tong's library. And I think it was the perfect decision to have Janora be the main character to interact with Wan Shi Tong, because she, in a way, is the most similar to Aang, in that, obviously we've seen her in a way reference Aang the most in terms of the spirituality aspect of him. And so to have Aang previously interact with Wan Shi Tong, and now Janora does, but she's also the bookworm of her family. It's very, very fitting that Aang kind of just in a way bumbled his way through that sequence of just oh, this is knowledge, wanted poster, where she actually has lots of knowledge to give to him because he's been away from the physical world for so long. The Professor Zay kind of revelation is one I'm glad they did. It was just that subtle reference of this is a thing that you clearly showed at the end of that episode, that Zay chose to stay in the library. What is the specifics about when we go back there with him? Obviously, I think speculation prior to Korra even coming out, prior to book 2, before we got all this information, it was sort of hard to speculate about because we actually didn't know the details of how the spirit world worked. Because obviously there was this distinction of his body was taken back as well, so does that mean he'll just die if he doesn't get any food? Which is exactly the case, that if you go into the spirit world with your body, you can bring bending if you have it, but you're also putting yourself at risk because your physical body is the core in a way of your being. So because I think that the speculation was either that Zay was either just going to be left alone with the knowledge forever. If you thought about the whole physical body thing, he'd just die getting as much knowledge as he could. Or the other one, the more, I suppose, hopeful idea would be that Zay somehow manages to convince Wan Shi Tong to like humans, and they maybe became like friends or something like that, and he maybe became a spirit over time. But obviously we learned the mechanics here, and it seems like Wan Shi Tong never really learned to like humans after everything that happened, and just ignored Zay and let him over time die, and didn't really care in the end. But still, I like that they gave us a answer to that mystery of what happened to Zay, and it's confirmed here. I like that Jinora even knew about it in the first place. I thought that was quite cool. And how by the end of the episode you realize that, oh, Wan Shi Tong only lets her look around the library because he goes to get Unalaq. He knows that her searching through the library will distract her long enough to bring Unalaq there, to use her as basically a threat to lure out Korra. And this is obviously at the point of the episode where Jinora finds the book about harmonic convergence and the significance of kind of keeping the portals closed. I suppose where they are and the details kind of surrounding that, in that Jinora finds out that directly you shouldn't just close the portal because you feel it's now a bad thing because Unalaq was evil when he asked you to do that. It's, no, they need to be closed in case something terrible happens. So it's really cool that she finds that. The fact that the kind of knowledge seekers, she seems to get on well with them. The joke about the knowledge seekers giving Wan Shi Tong bad information about how radios work was, I thought, a good use of Wan Shi Tong here. But yeah, the reveal that he sort of just betrays everyone here to a degree, I don't think it's too big of a shock in that, he didn't have a good view of humans, and it makes sense that he'd kind of stick to that. Nothing really changed as such. I do find it interesting to a degree because he seems to get on with Unalaq because obviously we know Unalaq only cares about spirits. So of course he'd support someone who has basically devoted his entire life to basically trying to free Vaatu and bring the world back to a point where spirits basically have control over both worlds, and they're in the complete ascendancy like it was in the past before Wan kind of split humans and spirits apart. It obviously is something I'd like to see addressed still going forward with regards to the human spirit kind of conflict and dynamic between both groups, that it still hasn't really been addressed in Korra as such. And what has been addressed has very much placed a lot of the issues on the human side of things, when I feel they've ignored the fact that I think spirits are responsible for a decent amount of it. Not to take humans completely out of the picture, but that, yes, obviously a lot of humans don't respect spirits, but at the same time, why is it a thing where that should just be the case? Why is it that humans should respect spirits? What about the other way around? What about spirits respecting humans, given that spirits nearly ended up leading to humanity being wiped out in a way? Spirits are fundamentally more dangerous, and it basically forced humans to learn the ability of bending to even defend themselves against them. And humans are the ones being blamed for everything. I get it that they're kind of going for the idea that humans, I suppose, have a higher capacity to just kind of change, and change occasionally kind of causes chaos and issues, whereas the spirits are a lot more, even though they can literally change forms and stuff like that, from dark to light. If their form is destroyed, they just are kind of reborn in a new form. They literally transform, but can't personally kind of change themselves. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of creativity, emotion from spirits. They can have emotion, but we don't really get to see them ever really show any of that. They just seem to think they're kind of high and mighty above all humans, and that's really it. And that's why I haven't been overly impressed with the portrayal of this dynamic in Korra, the Turf Wars comics so far. And I hope that when they finally choose to address this in a good way, that they really give it a balanced approach, because I feel a lot of it recently has been kind of vilifying like humans and just saying like, oh, spirits, we need to respect them, when it's kind of just like, why? What about respect the other way? Like, what about all the things that the spirits did that were problems, and we're just blaming everything on humanity? It's you know, we know sort of where we need to get to. One, I think, showed the way that humans and spirits can be, you know, friends. It's just, so far it seems like the spirits are only in any way willing to talk to Korra as the Avatar, and that's really it. But that's just my thoughts on that and how it sort of relates to the fact that Wan Shi Tong is this character who, in a way, kind of harbors one of the biggest issues with humans, and it'd be interesting if they decided to bring him back as a important player in any sort of you know, development of the human spirit conflict, because I assume there'd be other spirits, like a Heibai, like a dragon bird spirit, like Iroh, if he's truly considered a spirit by the other spirits, giving their perspective on the more positive side of humans, because I suppose it's one of those things where, like, the formation of the Avatar, some spirits don't seem to like it because it feels like, obviously, from their perspective, the Avatar sort of supports humans more than it does them. But Korra obviously is the Avatar for both sides. And I suppose the dynamic here is that she fundamentally opposes the Vatu plan, whereas I think some spirits actually like that plan, in that it gives spirits this kind of opportunity to sort of take over. But I don't think that's the case for every spirit, in that what happens here is that it is effectively every spirit being forced to turn dark, where it sort of seems like otherwise spirits, for the most part, choose to actually be in their light form when it's just a sort of neutral environment. So she, in stopping this plan, is actually helping some spirits, but obviously not every spirit is going to agree with that. So that's interesting. And then, yeah, the big confrontation at the end of the episode and the reveal of the dark spirit bending technique, the reverse of what we've seen so far. Whereas I suppose the light version of the technique is more of a sort of, it's a purification. It's sort of like guiding the spirit back, you know, rebalancing their energies to kind of make them a light spirit. It's, you know, guiding them away. This one seems to just purely be like destroying a spirit, in that he directly says, when talking about Jinora, your soul, your friend's soul, will be destroyed forever. So they're immediately confirming to us here that the spirit is the soul, which I think makes complete sense, but that he can destroy someone's soul using that technique, which is pretty crazy to think about. And then especially thinking about the finale and what Korra does, she chooses to purify Unavatu instead of use the dark version of the technique, which is interesting, but we'll discuss that when we get to the final episode of this book. And yeah, I think it's hard to disagree with Korra's decision to just kind of, you know, give up and just open the other portal. You know, Janora's life is at risk. She promised she'd do everything she could to protect Janora, and already, you know, she's let Janora get into this situation. She couldn't possibly let Janora get hurt. She had to do this. I don't think there's any real reason to criticize Korra for what happened here. She did what she could. She tried to fight and get through this, but she couldn't. She had no bending. It was completely against the odds, and is just barely saved from getting destroyed herself by the Dragonbird spirit. And that final scene is very, very emotional. You just from the first scene of the episode, bookmarked with the last, you saw how worried Tenzin was. You see how upset he is at the end. What happened to my little girl? All of his fears about allowing Janora to do this have sort of come true. And I think my reaction when I first watched this episode is like, please, 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 Tenzin, don't blame Korra for this. It wasn't her fault, and thankfully he doesn't. But it's still an aspect of the book of Korra trying to do everything she can to save Janora, and, you know, Tenzin wanting to do that here, and that leading to his journey to, I suppose, become a little bit spiritual and show that even if he doesn't have the real spiritual core to him, his caring for his family, for Korra, is something he can always offer them as a mentor or father figure type character. So I think they set up a lot of nice arcs quite interestingly here, and it's after a hopeful moment of like Korra gaining this knowledge about the first Avatar, finally going to the spirit world, having an idea to kind of reverse maybe some of Unalaq's plan that's already come to fruition so far. Everything's suddenly gone wrong now at this point, and both portals are open. Harmonic convergence is coming very, very quickly. Vaatu is imprisoned for now, but will break free as soon as the portals link up. It's a cool moment because, of course, the moment of like he tricks Korra to open the first portal, and then he just threatens Jinora to force Korra to open the second one, and it just puts immediately that okay, we're going to get harmonic convergence. The difference this time is that Unalaq is there as well, that suddenly Vaatu has a human on his side, and what turned the tables in the light favor in the first harmonic convergence was Juan being there with Rava. He was the turning point, the kind of different factor in that fight that led to Vaatu's ultimate defeat and being imprisoned. Now all of a sudden he's planning to do the same thing, and this is why I like the whole light avatar, dark avatar thing so much. But yeah, A New Spiritual Age, really, really good episode. Visually stunning, a lot of nice kind of character moments. The Iroh reveal, seeing him here and just talk about, deciding before he died to just pass on to the spirit world, and especially like in like next season, getting the reveal that like he seemingly didn't tell anyone that he did this, that they're just aware that he died at some point, that he never told anyone that he was going to live on in the spirit world. Really, really interesting. But yeah, that's been the review. If you have any thoughts about this episode, leave them in the comments below. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.